Renu, you want me to start?
Yes, sir, we can start now. We are live.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining this webinar, which is being hosted by the Council of EU Chambers of Commerce in India. We really appreciate all of you taking your time off to be with us this afternoon. We have a 1-hour webinar on a topic which is extremely topical and something that will have a great relevance to us in our lives as we go forward post this COVID and even during the remaining course of it. Let me start by just briefly introducing the Council of EU Chambers of Commerce in India. It is a chamber of commerce which has a very specific focus on promoting bilateral business relationship between India and the countries of EU, and it has a very rich history of having done that for almost 2 decades. The council is headquartered in Mumbai, but we have a footprint which covers various parts of the country. So there are businesses which are members of this chamber across India, and it was promoted by various binational chambers of commerce, and with His Excellency the Ambassador of the EU delegation as its chief patron and chief mentor. So over the years, we have had a number of occasions to deal with the delegation, with various dignitaries, political, economic, business, who have been here from EU, and we have also had the privilege of taking delegations from here. The chamber, like any other chamber, works across a whole gamut of things. So there are various subcommittees. Some committees are business committees, other committees are more along functional lines, but the whole purpose is to have a collaborative effort to enrich interaction and knowledge sharing between businesses in EU and India. Our membership base is fairly diverse. We have large corporations, medium corporations, corporations that are of EU origin, or Indian corporations which have business interests or potential business interests in EU. Because the whole purpose is to provide a networking platform where businesses from either side can have a friend, philosopher, and guide to reach out to whenever they want to look at a business opportunity. So one of the things that we do, and we do it quite well, is to disseminate knowledge about business opportunities emerging in countries in Europe, and similarly for those businesses who are in Europe to look at business opportunities in India, including looking for partners and looking for advice and so on and so forth. This particular webinar is one of a series that we are holding over a period of time during this COVID. Normally, it is our tradition to have actually physical, but we have gone digital, and I think in many ways it's good because the level of participation that we can see in these seminars is far wider because it's more convenient for people to come, and we are able to follow up on the consequences of these in a far more effective way. Having introduced this chamber, now let me just introduce a subject as to why we chose this topic. If you look at logistics in a very generic and shipping in a very generic term, this is one of those very unique industries where we say that they are both a lead as well as a lag indicator. Whenever a crisis happens, the first dislocation and disruption happens to the supply chain, and therefore the logistics and the industry that is related to movement of goods and people. And in this case, it was particularly bad because along with goods, we also had a huge disruption, and which continues even today, in the movement of people across continents and across nations. Most of the nations continue to have restrictions. The other dimension of this is that it continues to impact not only cross-border movement of goods and people, but it also impacts intra-border movement of goods and services. And India has been a great example of being a victim of this enormous amount of disruption that has happened. In many ways, in fact, I often say that logistics is probably as important as the healthcare, because even healthcare needs logistics of sources of supply and goods, doctors, consumables, and so on and so forth to reach them so that they are able to discharge their responsibility. And this pandemic has created a unique situation where whilst this was a service that was needed the most, there was a period of time where it was disrupted the most. But being an optimist, the interesting part of it is that this is the industry which will witness the most dramatic turnaround and a disruptive change in the way in which it is carried out, both on the international side, domestic long distance side, as well as the last mile side. And this is therefore going to be the industry which will be under the closest watch and scrutiny, not only of consumers and customers and suppliers and manufacturers, but also of investors. I believe that the valuations of logistics companies, supply chain companies, will see the maximum amount of interest amongst private equity and other investors. And in fact, I can already see, I advise a few private equity, they are happily hunting and scouting around for opportunities in this area. And also what will deliver from this pandemic will be very nuanced business models of logistics and supply chain. I know that, the purpose of this conversation is more about international and global logistics and shipping, but I just wanted to take this opportunity of driving home the fact that this is an industry which will see extremely bright days in the years to come. And therefore, if there are deliberations that we can have here and we can reach some conclusions which the chamber can take up at appropriate forums, not just appropriate forum does not mean just the government, they are just one policy making body, but I think also with other industry bodies, big members and other policy makers, I think this particular seminar would have actually served its purpose. So the timing of this seminar and the eminence of this panel makes it a very special afternoon, and thank you very much for taking your time off. Last but not the least, because I don't want to take too much of time, we have an hour to go. Let me have the privilege and pleasure of introducing the panelists. The moderator is Mr. Abhijeet Nair, the CEO of FEI Cargo. Mr. Nair, I thank you very much for taking the trouble out to be the moderator. The moderator is very important one because, and the toughest one.
Yes, Mr. Barat. Hello, Mr. Barat, are you there?
I think, no, he's there, very much he's there. But yeah.
I think he's got disconnected. Maybe we can self-introduce ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah, do that as well.
Improvise.
So good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, everybody. Bharat, is there back?
No, I think Mr. Nair, you can introduce yourself because we lost him.
Yeah,
Lost the connection.
So hi, I'm Abhijit Nair, and I'm going to be operating as the moderator for this panel discussion today. I operate in the interest of a company named FEI Cargo Limited, and I'm the CEO of that company with over 25 offices across India. I started my career in logistics about 12 years back as a trainee, and I have wet my hands in every field, and I've got to this position in the company. I'd like to take the opportunity to ask Mr. Vivek to introduce himself further.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everyone. This is Vivek Arya. I'm the Managing Director for Rhenus Logistics. Rhenus Logistics is a joint venture in India with the Rhenus Group. As a group, we are about 5.5 billion euros revenue. We employ about 33,000 employees globally, and we offer all services from air, ocean to road freight, rail freight, customs clearance, and warehousing business. Over to the next.
Yeah, now we have next slide, please. Yeah, we have Mr. Sujan Roy. You can introduce yourself, Mr. Roy.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sujan Roy. I look after international business for Tata Motors. I specifically am responsible for passenger cars. I also I'm responsible now for domestic and international marketing for electric vehicles. And I have been in the auto industry for nearly 28 years with many auto manufacturers. And it's a pleasure to be joining this eminent panel today to address you on the new developments which our industry sees.
Yeah. Now we have Mr. Barat. Once again, Mr. Barat, you would like to introduce the next panelist or self-introduction?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Barat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we can hear you as well.
the screen went blank. I was just wondering what has happened. Did you hear me till the end?
Mr. Barat, I would, the two panelists have already introduced themselves. So it's better we introduce
Yeah,
Mr.
please
Bhavik Mota.
Please proceed.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
do
Mr.
it
Mota, you
myself.
can.
Hi. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here on this panel with all the stalwarts. My name is Bhavik. I am part of the group called Maersk, headquartered in Copenhagen. I've been with this company for 18 years now, held various positions around the world, including leadership positions. Currently, I'm heading their product for South Asia, basically, which means both ocean as well as the landside operations. So I'm very excited to share my insights and learn from others in terms of how they see the industry evolving. So thank you once again.
Thank you. Next,
Good
over to you,
afternoon,
Mr.
everybody. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Also, great to be in this panel today. Thank you for having me. My background is in logistics. I worked at DB Schenker for about 15 years in various countries in various roles, mainly in contract logistics. And since 3 years responsible as a senior manager at HIDC to promote the Netherlands as a gateway to Europe and to make sure companies from overseas have an easy entry in the European market through the Netherlands. I'm responsible for the west coast of the USA and for India. Well, I've visited your beautiful country many times and look forward to go back as soon as possible again. Thank you.
Yes, so since the introductions are all done, I'll take it over from here. Thank you to the EU Chamber of Commerce, President Mr. Ashok Barat, and the Director Dr. Rhenus for giving us the opportunity to be a part of this panel discussion. Vivek, Bhavik, Sujan, and Jelle are my other panelists. So our moderator's job is easy and difficult both. Easy because these panelists will be discussing the aspects and subjects, and difficult because I have to ensure that they keep to the timing and stay with the subject, thus giving you all a very rich experience. All our panelists are heroes in their domain, and hence we have an exciting time ahead. I would like to ask my own questions and also entertain valid questions from all our friends attending this webinar. I'm sure we all understand that this is a different from a political debate, and all the concerned parties are equally affected by the current situation of course, at various degrees and intensities. So before I get started, I have a request to all of you attending this webinar. Your mics are on mute by default, so you can post your questions in the question section and I will present them to the panelists. But please do not ask the same questions or subjects already covered by the panelists. Your questions would not only be for clearing your doubts, but should also be productive for all the participants. Coming to our subject, when we use the word impact, it's in a negative tone always. But I will casually mention a couple of good things that have happened during this period, the 3 months that all of us have stayed home. First is that it has brought our families together. And secondly, I think we are breathing fresher air. The ecosystem has got a serious breather. So let us get started with our discussions on the impact of COVID-19 on logistics and shipping industry. And more importantly, as I say, the way forward. I'd like to have Ms. Vivek start off the discussion.
Thank you, Abhijit. So basically, in this opening remarks, I would like to mention about how it started, and India has been quite different than most parts of the world. In India, we had this lockdowns very abruptly announced. There were no time given for people to prepare for the lockdowns, which actually brought everything to a standstill, but led to a complete chaos, fear, and panic amongst people. This led by government issuing a lot of notifications around in terms of what could happen, what could not happen. But at the ground level, the situation was completely different. Then in the midst of the lockdown, government decided that due to port congestion, we want to decongest the ports. Let's move the cargo from the port to the ICD, CFS, and that activity started. However, in the meantime, most of the migrant laborers, the drivers had already left for their hometowns, which was led to acute shortage. We all have experienced that, and high detention damage costs. Overall, the shipping freight were more stable, but the trucking and the air freight rates were completely off the roof. Air freight, we know, because the belly capacities disappeared, the passenger aircrafts are not moving. It was only the freighters which were moving. On the road freight, most of the drivers had already migrated to their hometowns. So there was a huge gap between demand and supply, which again led to a lot of chaos in the marketplace. Most of the continuity plans which are designed by the logistics industry or by the users of the logistics, generally typically a contingency plan do not account for these widespread quarantines or disruptions in the businesses and community added to travel restrictions. So everybody was taken aback. And I think similarly, the people or the workforce in the logistics industry was probably the worst hit and the most ignored also. Most of the people in this industry have been dependent on daily wages, and they have been the least educated sector amongst all the other industries. And this also led a big challenge to adapting to technology in the late hours of these lockdowns. People from the white collar working from nice offices yet had the chance to use technology intelligently. But when you talk about blue collar drivers, there was a huge gap there. However, we saw also the good point that emergence of digitization, and I would like to mention that in the last few months, Rhenus has been doing online training for his drivers, which is a very pleasant sight to see. So that was another impact, which a positive impact was digitization. I think that also we saw that there was a big mismatch in the expectations from the service taker and provider side. And that also led to a lot of disruption and stretched supply chains. In terms of way forward, I think we have the lot has changed. These are unprecedented times. There are no data available to make accurate forecast, and a lot depends on many reasons, many possibilities ahead. What we have seen in the last few months is moving out of globalization, or do we call it renationalization? Global powers and leaders like Xi Jinping, Putin, Trump, our Prime Minister, they are the driving factors for renationalization. Business models are going through change. Supply chains will be rewritten. I think there's no clarity as of now. It takes us back to the original question where the manufacturing should be, whether it should be close to where the raw materials are sourced or to the consumption area. What should be the inventory levels? Whether the consumptions will revive back to normalcy, whether the demand of the products will continue to rise or will it shrink. So I think these are some of the questions which need to be answered to decide on the way forward on the logistics. But what I foresee and what is strongly emerging is that in times ahead, we will see a lot of consolidation happening in the logistics industry. And I believe these are times for collaborative logistics. It's not about competing anymore. It's about collaborating and collaborating into the interest of the service taker. Logistics in India particularly is very highly fragmented, and I think this brings a huge opportunity for us to work in alliances and collaborating to be more efficient. We see that logistics cost in India is probably the highest in the world, and the reasons for that is nothing but lack of efficiencies in our system. We will also see a major emergence of digitization, blockchains. We will see movement from e-paper to e-PODs to also customs launching the Turant. So we're talking about no human interface in customs clearance procedures. And I think at ground level, we need to see a lot of mechanization and automation, whether it's trucking, whether it's the warehousing. And for that, we need to see unitization or palletization like the European world. All these factors will bring a lot of efficiency going forward. And we will also, I think, one of the big step forward for logistics which will be taken is upskilling the workforce and also providing a safe working environment. I think safety is something which is always under question mark in India. So I think overall, I would see that approach to an integrated logistics going forward. Shipping lines, airlines can always withdraw capacities and maintain the rates, but the trucking community and the warehousing will be highly hit in times ahead. I foresee that normalcy will not return before Q4 of this year. So it's time for a lot of flexibility and resilience, and we have to wait and watch how the situation unfolds. Yeah, so that's from me, Abhijit.
Thank you very much, Vivek. That's an interesting perspective you have put forward. Of course, we will get into some more discussions after we've heard all our panelists. Sujan, can I ask you to go next and give us your perspective of this entire situation?
Thank you, Abhijit. I would like to give a perspective of the customer side. While much of what Vivek has said has been applicable to the automotive industry, the chaos in terms of the supply chains has been something which has been totally unpredictable. People don't realize, but an automotive product, building a car is like a complex ballet with 3,000 dancers. And it is only when these 3,000 people all across the world dance together efficiently does an automobile get produced. While my company also went into lockdown in line with the government requirements, most of the dealers, everybody shut down. What really compounded the chaos for my industry, for the bounce back of the industry, was the disruption of the transportation channels, the logistics channel, but more importantly, the migration of the casual labor back to their villages. What we have seen is, as the lockdown has been slowly relaxed or lifted in some of the places where the impact of the virus has been lower, we have seen that demand has come back. Surprisingly, in India, we see the demand is bouncing back much more stronger than what we had foreseen in the places where the impact of the virus is not much. Unfortunately, for us, when we look at restarting this complex dance of 3,000 suppliers dancing together, that is where we are not able to supply the vehicles in the quantities that we would be able to provide for which the demand exists. And that is where I see ongoing pain for our business, automotive business, but also for many other businesses like us, which are complex in nature, which rely on the efficiency of these logistics and shipping industry. That is the bad news. The good news is that the impact or the terror which we started with has not materialized. The impact, if I may say so, has been rather mild, even staying in the hotbed called Mumbai, which has been the most affected, like New York in the US, for particularly the same reason. The fact of the matter is, many of the people who are affected in a mild way. The impact is not so serious that we had foreseen, which is why people are learning the best practices, how to deal with the emergency, how we need to change our behavior. That is changing, and people are learning to adapt, and which is why I expect that as and when the government decides that it is safe enough to open up, people are going to go back to their old ways of consumption faster than expected. It is not going to be a doomsday scenario where all of us are going to live like monks. And that is why I feel, at least from an Indian scenario or the South Asian scenario, that we will tend to bounce back faster than we have seen so far. We'll have to live with COVID, I doubt that we will go back to the good old days of shaking hands and watching movies and ordering out meals. There will be definitely some changes in our habits, but it is going to revive back faster, and it is necessary for us to prepare for that new world where the demand is going to come, and keep in mind the key changes which will define the post-COVID scenario. That's all from me.
Thank you very much. Yes, you have touched upon a few points. We'll definitely get into that later. Bhavik, your take on this entire situation?
Yeah, I think. Can you hear me loud and clear?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, super. Thank you so much. First of all, namaste, the new greeting in the COVID scenario. And I think what Sujan and Vivek both have nicely put is the whole India context to how this whole COVID is impacting the logistics and shipping. I just want to take it a little bit from the global perspective. And the way we see, right, the outbreak is been felt even more strongly with every passing day. And despite of the unprecedented steps and cumulative efforts undertaken by the government, the businesses and individual to stem its growth, the virus continues to create havoc across the industries and verticals. To start with China, the dominant role as the world factory, they call it, right, means that any major disruption that you see in China, it puts the entire global supply chain at risk, because every single company in the world who is global in nature has heavily invested by and large in China in some shape or the form, either for raw materials or for finished goods, what have you. Demand globally has taken a beating, and it's created such a scenario that it definitely also had an impact on the supply side. The schedules have become erratic because suddenly the consumptions around the world are changing. What was relevant today is not relevant tomorrow. Everybody is scratching their heads to figuring out what the projections for the next 2-3 months, be it Tata Motors, be it Bajaj, be it Marks and Spencers, be it H&M, be it Targets, Walmart's, agro customer from Amritsar, LT Food. Everybody is trying to figure out what the demand scenario is going to likely be. And with the demand fluctuating and all the challenges that what Vivek and Sujan mentioned about the transport, the labor, the migrant issues, right, everything coming to standstill, everybody was grappling. So the processing of documents were taking longer, the transit times have become way too long than what it used to be. The shipping planning itself has become very complex with all the limitations that we have. And if you see the data over the last 2 months, and they all said Q2 is the worst impacted period for the COVID scenario, it's a 20% drop. And if you also look at all the studies that IMF is talking about or World Bank is talking about, the 5% drop in global economy. And if the contraction is going to be 5%, the impact it has on the world trade is almost 15 to 20%. So the new normal for a very foreseeable future is going to be 80% of what we've seen in the past. That means a slump of 20% in the consumption that we have. That means there will be challenging times and putting pressure on the inventory which is lying around the world. How do we clear it? All the major e-commerce retailers you talk about, they're talking about mega sales in July, so they can clear up the old stock before the fresh demand comes in. Same case with the auto companies. They really want to find alternative buyers for their export demand that is taken a beating. So what really is moving right now, if you see, is no points for guessing, is the pharma, the FMCG products, the rice, and all the food related items. What has really taken a beating from the global scenario, and of course chemicals. Chemical is, by the way, the globally fastest moving commodity as we speak right now, because it's required in whether you're manufacturing PP suits, masks, hospital equipments, medicines, what have you. So chemical is the fastest moving commodity right now. What has really taken a beating is your auto, is your retail, and is your lifestyle related good. Of course, the luxury segments, which is going to take a long time to bounce back. So there are a lot of challenges. But while the world is adapting with this ever-changing environment, what thanks to the dedicated employees around the world in logistics and with the BCP, somehow people have managed to manage the current requirement and demand around the world. our customers, vendors, everybody is super concerned, saying what the outlook is, because nobody can predict. Everybody is doing some guesswork based on some simulation, but honestly, nobody really knows what is the future looks like and how fast it will take to recover. And all the alphabets that we know are being used: U-shaped recovery, V-shaped recovery, W, double W, and name it, and it's all under the reading. But we as a global integrator, and also the big irony is generally we are, is it clear?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, yeah, so I'm saying the big irony, at least one point I want to make, the big irony is that we as a global integrator, as Maersk or any other shipping line, are basically being tasked by ensuring we speed up the supply chain. We ensure that goods are reaching just in time. Many of the customers now are asking us to slow down the supply chain, right? So it's very ironical because everybody wants to hold up the stock. So the requirement is very different. The products that we offer are very different. We're talking about forward storage solutions. We're talking about detaining in transit, warehousing solutions till the demand picks up. So the requirement is also evolving with the changing time. So it's a very unprecedented. So the short term, the requirement is how we manage this, how we help our customers reduce the cost, bring in more efficiencies, help them find alternative routes, alternative buyers. In the long term, I think there are going to be three major changes. A, there is going to be to some level of restructuring and deglobalization, which means there is going to be definitely acceleration of regional supply flows. COVID will accelerate this trend thanks to US-China trade war, India-China sentiments right now that are going on, Brexit and what have you. Sustainability, everybody is going to go for, you're already hearing about IMO 2020, lower sulfur. So there's a huge impact on the way environment related changes that are going to come in. And last but not the least is going to be the digital technology. And the way the digital will come in, it will reduce the information asymmetry that we have on the transportation right now. It will also help, it will also blur the line between a shipper and a forwarder, between a shipping line and a logistics provider. Everybody is trying to provide end-to-end, and a lot of people will also invest heavily on the digital side, not only from the system perspective, also because the work from home model is working. So a lot of people who are not keen to put their systems on cloud, right, or we're sitting on the fence, should I do it, will get that final one nudge to be able to also transform and be a bit more reliant on cloud, so people can operate from whenever they are, where they are. And a lot of attention will be paid to digitally transform both the offerings as well as the way we operate in the future world. So future is not that bad. I think there are a lot of good prospects. We will bounce back, but the new normal is going to be very different from what we are seeing right now. So that would be my opening on the subject.
Thanks, Bhavik. I read a very interesting meme once, a long time back, a few months back, that said what's prompted most of the companies to turn digital, and the biggest reason was COVID-19. So, like you say, a lot of people refuse to turn digital, but this forced them to turn digital. So, you know, people who believe that they couldn't do it, they had to do it. It was not about could it. So let's get to Jelle now. I mean, let us have the European perspective on this.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also, namaste from my side. Nice to see you, everybody, or not to see you, but to address you. Yeah, also in the Netherlands and also in Europe, the picture has been quite different. Some industries were very strong, actually. You think of life sciences or food retail shops, they were very strong. On the other hand, the retail in the normal shopping street dropped dramatically. So some logistics providers benefited a lot and some didn't. In general, e-commerce definitely had a strong growth as many people started to buy online. When you look towards the future, we think there are 4 aspects that will change in logistics and supply chain. First of all, there will be more robust supply chains. So there will be a need for more robust solutions where you're not dependable on one supplier or where that one part is only supplied from that factory. Digitization, as already mentioned, will definitely be picking up sooner than before. Sustainability, as well as mentioned before, will get a more prominent place as we're redesigning supply chains. It's really an opportunity to do so in a more sustainable fashion. And e-commerce is there to stay, has shown a steep increase over the last months. So supply chains really need to be ready to cater for that growth as well. So a few remarks about the robust supply chain, also mentioned by Bhavik. De-globalization will definitely be part of the equation, we think, or at least a different kind of globalization, that you're less dependent on or one supplier in China or in any other region. Also, the necessity to build up more stock is a requirement. So the just-in-time model, that all the goods are constantly flowing in the nice flow without any disruption, that will be of the past. We think that in certain strategic locations around the globe, customers or shippers will build up stock to make sure that should a disruption be there, that they're able to cope with that in a short-term way. A Gartner study that recently came out showed that 33% of supply chains are considering to move out of China. So that's already an indication that that's happening. When you look at digitization, visibility is of course key in any supply chain, but especially true in a crisis situation. So you need to have the right information to manage that crisis, but also to improve your operations. Think of performance dashboards and things like that. Digitization also links to robotization and automation. With less human interference possible, I think the next few years you'll see a sharp increase in robots in warehouses, and wherever possible, things will be automated. It's more and more easy to implement. It's not that capital intensive anymore, and it really solves an issue on both sides. And last but not least, on the digitization part, data. Lots of logistics providers or shippers or carriers are sitting on an enormous amount of data. When you analyze that correctly, when you do the right things with that, you can really improve your operations, especially when you start sharing that with peers. When you start looking where can we work together, which was mentioned before already as well. Where can we work together to improve the operations? Sustainability, well, as mentioned, the redesign needs to be in a greener fashion. And actually, it's always interesting to have the discussion, is greener also more profitable? And I think it is, because when you are more efficiently operating your business in the utilization of transport modes, or when you work together with peers in a certain territory, you're, well, having less footprint on the environment. So I think that really goes well together, but you need to start to work together. And then e-commerce, I think, well, in the lockdown, we've all ordered quite some things online, and groceries and everything is more and more common to do that online. And well, the projections are that that will not stop this growth. So any shipper, any company active in the global marketplace needs to find their strategy and their way out they address that market. So opportunities enough. Also looking at markets around the globe, whether it's APAC, Europe, or the US, when you have a good solution to these markets, you can definitely be successful. So that was my input. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jelle. Thank you. So we've done with our basic, we've got our impressions from all our panelists. I request the attendees, if they want to start pushing in some of the questions, they can start. But in the meantime, I will start asking my questions. So I'll start with Vivek in the same order that we spoke about. You spoke about collaboration amongst the otherwise so-called competitors. Could you elaborate a little more, because a lot of our attendees are also from the same field, so people should understand what we're speaking about.
Okay. Typically, if you look at it, there are two models. One, you see the large international players coming into the Indian market. They are aggregating all the different vendors, which are basically the trucking companies or custom brokers, and they are able to offer one solution to the customer. I think the local companies themselves need not wait for an aggregator to come from overseas to do that step. The companies can then take an initiative locally to aggregate themselves depending on their strengths, and they need to complement each other. Typically the industry is so prone to competition, and at times the competition is so unethical. I think all of us understand how this works there. I think it's time that we find our strengths, we complement each other. It's not necessary if you do not have a pan-India reach or a national reach, or you're in all products or not, but you can complement each other. You look at the examples of Europe. You have the trucking industry there in Europe, where you have these alliances. One of them is called the Systems Alliance, for example. These alliances work so beautifully well, where each company is representing a particular region. So I think it's time that people start looking at collaborating together to be able to provide more efficient solutions. So that's what I meant by collaborative logistics.
Okay, fair enough. Sujan, you spoke about demands coming from, high demands coming from. Where are these coming from? The cities or the villages? How is it working for, Tata Motors? Because a lot of us believed otherwise.
Very interestingly, when the first lockdown was lifted in China, we saw a very interesting phenomenon. There were a lot of people who used to commute with two-wheelers. These guys immediately found the money and upgraded to cars. Many of people who used to take office transportation, buses, etc., these people shifted to individual vehicles. Many of the people who were taking public transport, these are the people who started taking individual transport predominantly because of the safety of being in your own bubble, which you have sanitized yourself, which you know who are the people you have shared with. And that is what drives the demand for automobiles. So whoever is able to afford it, whoever is able to get loans, they are going in for automobiles. We are also seeing a similar boom in second-hand vehicles. So that is where the demand is coming from. So what we expect and what we see in terms of demand or growth or loss are suddenly going to go a little topsy-turvy, because this particular situation is changing behavior in many ways. What we are seeing is, of late, the kind of hits on our websites, they have gone up significantly. We are seeing that even in cities which are currently under lockdown, people have started researching, quite really anticipating maybe from the 1st of July or 15th of July, the systems will open up, the cities will open up, and then they will have to travel. I was talking to a friend who works with OLX, and they are seeing a massive increase in demand as people are totally reconfiguring their lives post-COVID. I was talking to a few friends who own a private jet charter of all places out of Chennai, and they are seeing the high net worth individuals have stopped flying regular flights, and they are actually spending the extra money and chartering a flight in case they need to go for a business meeting. So in fact, I was very surprised. I said, you guys must be down. He said, no, we are seeing a boom time. And that is why we need to be alive to opportunities in our own fields. You never know what will become a boom and what will go bust. So that is the thing that we have learned to live with. Business is going to be all about VUCA.
Okay.
So unpredictability to the max. So people who can turn on a dime and execute fast. These are the teams which will stand to benefit in the world of today, and that is what I see is going to be a key strength. Of course, digitization, yes, that is going to become the new normal. But being able to see the trend, to read the crystal ball fast enough and react to it is what businesses have to do.
Okay, fair. Bhavik, coming to you. So your ships are all ready at this moment. Whenever you get the green signal, they can start flying because they're already on the ocean. But how about the boxes, your containers, your special equipments? How these I know for a matter of fact that a lot of your equipment was stuck at the port because of the imports that had come in, but nobody could custom clear. So how is that situation? What is Maersk doing as a company to mitigate that problem?
Yeah, so there are multiple issues, right? So One is that what has changed in the industry over the last 10-15 years is that at least on the ocean side, there has been a lot of consolidation that has happened. If the pandemic would have to happen, say in 2000 or 2002, we would have had rate wars, we would have excess capacity, prices would have crashed, people would have not been very agile. What has really changed over the years, there's a lot of agility that came in, right? So everybody did anticipate. Of course, nobody was able to guess what is the right percentage of business that will basically drop, but everybody took a right step saying, okay, demand is low, let's cut down on the capacity wherever possible to ensure that the demand and supply matches to the extent it can. So on the ocean side, the moves was done. On the demand side, or on the equipment side, right, of course the imports came in, but if you really look at the numbers in April and May, it's a startling number. The drop in imports in India is 51%, right, because of the lower consumption that we have, plus the lack of raw material requirement that we have, and plus the stock pile up that is already there with most of the customers. The inflow has reduced drastically. So there was a period between March and April where there was congestion, where the boxes were not getting clear, things were not moving, and a lot of conversion happened because the people who were dependent on road were really struggling, whereas the rail was quite efficient. So we saw a massive conversion, and we basically also ensured that we tie up with the right rail operators to ensure that whatever can transfer from road to rail, we are able to move. So the big transformation happened from road to rail. B, we also kind of created a value for the customers to clear and also offer them storage solutions, because if you are not able to clear the boxes, find a better, cheaper forward storage solution. So offering road to rail options, offering storage solutions to the customers who want to keep it for a longer period till the demand picks up, and then at the same time self correction that happened because of the lower imports. Now the situation is normalizing, now to the extent that the export demand is rising very rapidly, right, because everybody is trying to find a buyer outside India given the low consumption and the demand that is subdued in India. So export demand is rising, import is at its all-time low, so it's creating that kind of a gap between import and export. So it's rather more requirement to get more boxes in to meet the export requirement. So the whole dynamics have changed in the last 3 months.
Fair enough. Understandable. Jelle, so you spoke about the buying demand in this, 33% of the supply chain is moving out of China. My question is, how is this buying demand and selling pattern going to change? Do you think people are going to move away from globalization to renationalization, or as it localization? Do you think that's going to happen, or it's still going to move from China to say an India or a Vietnam, or it's going to come from China back into Europe, to a village in the Netherlands or a village in Germany?
Well, I think it would depend also largely on the industry you're in. But for sure is that many companies will now do a study, what is the best way forward? And I think in that study, many companies will conclude that they have been too dependent on key factories around the globe, and that they want to change this. And that they will indeed move to a more regional setup. Also that they have stock closer by, but also that they have more options in case somewhere else around the globe something happens. So it's depending on the industry, but definitely the way we've known, say, the past decades, that, well, the factory of the world will supply everything just in time to all the markets. That will change, yes. And yeah, can be in Europe, of course, can also within APAC, you will see certain developments, because it's not also very interesting to produce something in Europe and then ship it back to APAC when that's the main market. So there will be a new playing field, a new orientation of that setup.
Yep. I
mean, just add one comment on that. Just one comment,
yes.
If you right. Also, what Jelle said, right? So while you said the overall discussion is always whether from China it will move to Vietnam. I think Vietnam has absorbed already a lot from what they can do. The great potential was for India and Bangladesh to kind of capitalize, but there are a lot of infrastructure challenges, government regulations, legal aspects. The two big names that are coming, right, and only time will tell whether they are successful, is Turkey and Mexico. And that's where they're seeing a lot of shift around the garment side will happen to Turkey, and a lot of the manufacturing setup will move. And those are the governments and the businesses which are really moving fast to kind of attract the investments that they want to. So we will see a lot of shift happening on that front to those two economies at least.
Yeah, I've heard that as
I
well.
have a
Sujan.
slightly contrarian take. I
Yep.
feel that while relocating out of China is a flavor of the season, ultimately economics is king. Whoever is able to produce cheaper than the others will eventually claw back their market share. So if tomorrow, if India is able to become the lowest cost producer for 500 items, we will be able to pull back market share. I think that the global economy is sufficiently integrated to ensure that whoever is the lowest cost producer wins.
Absolutely. So my reading 70% will still stay in China. So it's not that 100% is going to shift out of China. So it's the 30% who is going to grab that.
I think the economic situation and the political situation have to be looked at separately. Today there are a lot of political issues and there are a lot of emotional issues behind these sentiments. And I think ultimately, as Sujan said, in long term, the economics will sustain, the politics will not sustain, or emotions will not sustain.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. Whereby when that one product is only supplied from China, and when there's something happening like this, then you need to have an alternative. So I think
you want to de-risk yourself.
The dollar will speak.
It brings back to the initial question. That in supply chain you always designed your manufacturing either close to your raw materials or close to your consumption point. I think it takes us back to the drawing board as to decide where the manufacturing has to be, and then is the next step. So it is, if the consumption now, China is not only a producer for the world, it's a huge consumer market. It's a market which consumes highly. So how many companies can stay away from the consumption area? So I think that's a call, that it will time will decide actually.
No, and there is one thing I wholly believe as well, is that no other country other than China knows the art of quantity making, to make the prices better. So they don't talk about 100, thousands, 10,000. They talk about 1 million pieces. The straight they come, they start thinking, if I'm going to do it for one company, if I'm going to, Sujan is giving me an order, let me think of how I can replicate that for 10 other companies. And I give him the best price, but I make good amount of profits with it as well. And that's the psycho shift that I don't see any other country has developed, that other than to a certain extent Vietnam, yes, but no other country believes in that way, especially not in India.
It takes at least 5 years to get to that level.
And our systems, our infrastructure is not designed for such huge mass production and supply chains.
Yeah. So we have 5 minutes left, but we also have a lot more questions. Do you want me to pose one more question to each of you, and then we go to we have some 3 questions from our attendees, or you want to? How do you want to do that?
Let's take the question.
I would like to ask you another question. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then the first question will come for Jelle, is from a gentleman by the name of Dhawal Shah. He's asking which EU countries are expected to be new entrants for the Indo-EU supply chains, and which industries?
So which EU countries?
Yes, are expected to be the new entrants. EU supply chains.
Yeah, towards India.
Yes, I guess so. I believe so. Dhawal.
Okay. Well, when you look at the Netherlands, we are very strong already in exports towards APEC, but also towards India. And yeah, there will be also in Europe. There's a changing landscape, right, in the near future, with Brexit coming up, where flows most probably will move to the mainland, and from there will be shipped also overseas. Eastern part of Europe, say Poland, Czech countries like that, are also strong in growth. So also there you see a development in sourcing from, for example, also APAC towards the eastern part of Europe, and use that as a hub, and that the Netherlands and Germany, yep, and these countries have a different role. But it's also, again, about the industry and what is important for you as a company. So there's, but looking at the countries, I definitely think that there will be a more focus on a centralization, especially after Brexit. And there, well, the Netherlands definitely has good cards to play a big role there.
Okay, so I hope Dhawal, Jelle has been able to answer your questions. I have another one from possibly for any one of you can take that. Bhavik, Vivek, Jelle, anyone can take this. So they asked, what are the investments in technology and innovation that are happening right now to adapt to the new normal in an efficient way without compromising on customer experience?
I can take that. So if you see industry-wide in logistics, there are three broad level. There are three things: how do I book my cargo, how do I move my cargo, and how do I store my cargo? Right, at a very, very broad level. So, and shipping and logistics in general is very traditional, very documentation heavy, very complex to manage. So on booking, most of the requirements, like whether you book an airline ticket on goibibo.com or yatra.com or any other websites, right? So there are a lot of these aggregators. We are seeing more and more aggregation and digital offering that is happening. And most of the industry players are also coming with their own digital offerings. So today, if you want to book a cargo with Maersk, you don't have to call a sales agent and say, can I book and what is the rate from A to B? You go online, there is a very live rate, which changes based on demand and supply, and you can book and you basically get a guaranteed space. So all the shipping players are investing heavily, so the customers has ease of booking, whether they're on mobile phone or on their move, or whether they're sitting in the office, so they don't have to rely too much on calling and getting the booking confirmed and have 20 people following up with the shipping line. Second, when it comes to move, most of them are tying up. There is a lot of vertical integration that is happening upstream and downstream, where basically everybody wants to become an end-to-end supplier. So now you don't have to talk to 5 different players, because otherwise you have to talk to an ICD player for an ICD deal, a port operator separately, a shipping line separately, a clearing agent separately. Now most of the companies in the logistics are saying one-stop shop. You come to me, you tell me your requirement, I'll take care of your warehousing, I'll take care of your movement, your clearance, your shipping, and I will offer you one cost. And for that, you also require an integrated digital offering, which basically you can add to cart, so to say. So that's also changing on the move side, and more aggregator model is happening, because in India, trucking is very fragmented. You have all the mom and shops owning 2 or 3 trucks, and it's very volatile. And if you are a big shipper like a Tata Motors or Bajaj, you cannot deal with those, and you need somebody to play an active role, aggregate that requirement, and give it the best price possible. So you're seeing a lot of digitization on that front. On the documentation flow, you are seeing the likes of trade lanes, port community system, which are trying to integrate every player, so there is visibility and transparency on the operation. So there are heavy investments happening on that front, where you basically have a blockchain technology, which will basically give the transparency on documentation flow, which is missing today on the shipping line. So those are the big changes that are happening, and of course also evolving, because it's a bit more complex compared to buying a toothpaste on an Amazon. It's very different to buy space on a ship. But the things are evolving, and we are getting there. But it has evolved a lot, and it will evolve even more. I don't know if Vivek and Sujan wants to.
Just I want to add from there. I think the biggest take from IT or digitization is visibility across the supply chain. And as Sujan mentioned, the companies which are flexible and quick in making decisions to where to turn around the inventories, where the markets are, how quickly they can respond to the changing environment. And that's the need of the hour, and that's only possible with digitization. Today, across the fraternity, large companies to small companies, everybody is investing in IT systems. So for sure today, you can have a real-time visibility on inventory, whether it's on ships, aircrafts, road, rail. You have real-time inventory levels or visibility to make quick decisions. So I think everything is possible in today's world, actually. Yeah, over to you, Sujan. You
wanted to add on that something?
Yeah. So there is, while one has been seeing digitization overall as a trend going through, I would like to remind our audience that, for example, Bluetooth as a technology, it was invented, I think, 12-14 years back. I don't remember exactly when. Bluetooth as a technology was invented 12-14 years back, but In the last 3 years, we have started seeing Bluetooth becoming reliable, becoming ubiquitous. I expect that for our industry, for logistics specifically, and for that industry as a whole, the Bluetooth of the industry is going to be blockchain. We have seen that the interest in blockchain has always been there with cryptocurrencies and financial transactions. But increasingly, over the last few months, I'm seeing the applications in terms of the widespreadness. I mean, I didn't think that marketing, I'm essentially a marketing person, would see blockchain, but I'm seeing applications coming up in that. So within the next 3 years, I suspect that we will be seeing a lot more of blockchain coming into validation in terms of securitizing operations. And this is going to be one big technological shift. The second technological shift is the use of autonomous, bots and robotics, replacing many of the lower end, the most manual of things. In a place like India, also it is becoming economically viable. We are seeing in my industry, in the auto industry, initially when I was with my previous employer, which was a German company, we decided not to automate certain processes. We decided to keep it manual because it didn't make sense. But today, I'm company, automation is picking up. And this has tremendous ramifications also in terms of the social fabric of India, where there is already so much unemployment. And if bottom of pyramid jobs are going to disappear, we will see certain complications there.
Yeah, I mean, Sujan, that was going to be my next question to you about automation in an industry. Today, like you mentioned in your opening statement, that people was your problem, not the demand. It was actually manufacturing it and bringing it into the people was the problem. So, like you find in Europe, it's very difficult to find large-scale employees. Even the biggest companies have lower number of employees than our mid-sized or small-sized industries. Is that because of this migrant labor issue that happened and other things? Is it something that companies are now going to believe in saying, I'd rather invest on technology than being stuck at a later date like this?
As has been said time and again, unfortunately, the driving force behind technology adoption has not been the CTO, who's been sitting in a corner and quietly chipping away at his keyboard. It has been COVID. And this adaptation of technology, the fact that today even a housewife is looking at a Roomba automatic, sweeping machine, definitely as industries where we have far critical processes than sweeping the room, we are looking at automation in a far bigger way. One is that. Second thing is another thing that is going to get accelerated is taking entire processes and outsourcing it end to end. Where we have in the past always thought that it was unbelievable that certain processes could be moved out of the core competency. What I'm seeing that it simply makes much better cost sense, efficiency sense by taking whole chunks of processes and just move it out of the company, out of the business process. And that is where opportunities lies for future entrepreneurs who are able to dedicate themselves to picking up certain portions and saying that, wait a minute, I will take this portion over from you, and you need not employ anybody. Whether I use employees or whether I automate the process and make it flawless, that is my worry. But I will deliver 15% cost efficiencies to the way you're doing it. And that is a very interesting proposition. As a business leader, as a person who's handling a profit and loss statement every month, I think it behooves my responsibility to look at that statement and see what are the opportunities where I can pick entire segments and just move it off. And that is what comes to the gig economy and things like that.
Fair enough. Yeah, true. There's one last question that I have for all four of y'all, but before that, I will have another question for Vivek. Do you think, I mean, everyone can answer that as well, but what's your signal for the mid-sized Indian forwarders? Lie low or get aggressive?
I would never go with lie low. I always suggest that people have to grow. And these are the times you need to look at growth even more importantly than you have done in the past. Before growth, I think people need to focus on their liquidity and their financial capabilities. I can tell you for sure the companies which were leveraged during these times were the worst hit than the people who were better off their balance sheets. So growth has to come on your own capital, not borrowed capital. So I would go for growth on own capital.
Okay, that's a good answer to give. Yeah. Now my last, I mean, it's already 5:07. We are already we are ahead of our schedule. I don't know what our chamber thinks about it. Can we go ahead? I have no signals from them on that. But one important question that I would like to ask is with regards to the points that Bhavik put up, and everyone, and me and Vivek come from the same sort of industry. Is logistics going to be online in the future?
Yeah, so
Any
I would
four
like
of you
to answer
can
that.
answer
Yeah,
that.
maybe I take the lead to start answering on that one. Ultimately, in a country like India, people buy from people, not prices. Yeah, and this is the industry which is all about relationships. It's all about comfort level, and it's all about go to the person. If the customer feels comfortable that I have somebody to go to in case of an escalation or a problem, that comfort, it's not about buying a toothpaste or a shirt out of the e-com. What could go wrong in buying one toothpaste or one shirt? You can always send it back and get a new one. But here, if you have hundreds of containers, your supply chain worth millions are stuck, then what do you do? So I think it will go digital. A lot of aspects will go digital, but ultimately it's the service which will take precedence over anything else. And that's very difficult to measure on digital platforms.
Thanks. Yeah, Bhavik, you can go next. Oh, Sujan can go next, and then Sujan.
Let's Sujan
go next.
So the quick answer to that is not why logistic. Everything is going to go digital. So there is no running away from it. It is like a massive tsunami. You can hide, but you can't run. Digital is going to be everywhere. Yes, relationships are going to be important, but I believe that very soon there would be certain consolidation in this industry, whereby a person emerges. Amazon emerges, where in Amazon you don't have to worry about delivery. You know that there are certain redressal mechanisms if your shipment goes wrong, if you receive a wrong product or a faulty product. I believe that there is potential for a behemoth to emerge who seamlessly welds this industry into one Amazonian behemoth, whereby you can interact with your app and you don't have to have personal contact. There is opportunity for that. Until that happens, until that Six Sigma sort of delivery happens from one organization, yes, relationships are going to matter. But the day it becomes a well-oiled, superb working machine, you don't need relationships anymore. So until that day.
No, but my question is not about digital. Of course, digitalization is a different thing. Digitalization is we making, like you said, blockchain. We're bringing in stuff that you need. You can take your BLs online and other things. Online, I mean, is like what Bhavik mentioned, where it becomes like a make my trip. Do you personally think that freight forwarding would also become something like that? Because there's a lot of variations in that. There's a lot of nitty-gritties. Today also, even you look at travel also, you possibly buy your basic tickets online. But if it's a little complicated, you still go and fetch your travel agent and ask him, I want to do this, I want to do that. So digitalization, of course, will always be there, but will it become online? Bhavik is raising his hand. Do you want to go for that, or should I ask Bhavik?
Yeah, I think I will keep it simple, right? In my books, the pie is too big, and it all stems from the requirement the customer has, right? Because the ones who buy online, we also have to keep it in mind, and especially in a B2B scenario, right, are the ones who do not have a very good buying power. So if you're going to ship 2 or 3 containers a month, you will not get that face time with a big forwarder or big shipping line, and you would prefer an online method to book it. If you're a large parcel customer like a Tata Motors or Bajaj, you would want a customized, personalized solution for your supply chain, so to say. So you have a long-term contracts and you have a short-term contracts. So long-term contracts, customized depending on the requirement, will still remain. So there is a space for that. A lot of the SMEs or the very small segments will move to online because they will have direct access to a transparent rate provided, and the logistics company will be able to provide the end-to-end solution to that. But so on the booking side, there is a role for both, but you will see a lot of digitization going in terms of the way you book. On the information flow, though, right, on the BLs and what, I personally feel 100% at some point will become digitized with the blockchains and with all the investment that every logistics player, be it a forwarder, be it a shipping line, be it a transporter that is putting in, the whole information flow of the product will basically become 100% digitized in the long run.
Yeah, also
Sujan.
just to add, you have to also, sorry, you have to understand what are the roles of the mediators today. What are the role of a forwarder? And what are we actually providing? We are providing that human interface. We are financing the business of the logistics business. And as long as the need for this mediator is large, they will continue to exist. The moment the need of these mediators is not there, everything is online, we have blockchains, we have digitized platforms, no human interface, whether in the customs or with dealing with the bills of lading, I think that the role will diminish, and so will their jobs diminish.
Yeah, fair enough.
See,
the European
just one thing I wanted to add.
Let Sujan make a point, and we get the European perspective on this with Jelle. Sujan, yes.
Yeah. So the exports division of my company had about 350 people, and obviously in the exports division a lot of international travel happens. Until a few years ago, we used to have half a dozen people embedded in our department who were sitting and doing the ticketing and hotel arrangements, etc. One fine day, it was decided that everything would be moved online and there would be no physical presence. At that time, it was very impossible, nearly impossible for us to imagine what happens. I mean, how do we go about it? Now, 3 years down the line, when I look at it, it is working smoothly, and we have reduced our costs significantly. Our travel, I haven't come across any horror story where someone got, stranded in Mogadishu without a flight or wherever. And these are the markets that we operate in. We don't do all our car sales to nice and elegant markets. Usually, our markets are fairly messy. So I expect that the systems and processes will upgrade to such an extent that very soon someone will emerge who will be able to do this totally seamlessly and digitally. That's what I feel.
Okay, Jelle, the Dutch point of view on this.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying that, well, logistics is still a people's business for sure for the next few decades. I think it's more about looking at digitization and technology where you can improve your operations, where you can take out waste in your operations. And I think there's still ample opportunity for that, looking at freight or also within warehouses, etc. And then it is actually supporting the people in the logistics business to take time or have more time to build that relationship, and most probably more with the larger customers, like Bhavik pointed out, than with the, say, the customer with 1 or 2 containers. They will most probably be more than happy to go online, book the shipment, and see the process from pickup till delivery online. But with, say, the larger accounts, when the operation is supported entirely by, well, say, the most happy flow from a digitization point of view, then the relationship is and will remain important. Then the account manager, also the people more higher in the organization, they need to have somebody to talk to and develop strategies and look at improvements, cost reductions, studies, things like that. And those things will not be done by computers in the end. They will support that decision-making process as well.
Fair enough. Yep. Okay, so my last question: what do you think is the impact of going to be? What's going to be the future? What's going to be 2021? With considering, I know we are not, we can't predict so much in the future, but what's your views on what's going to be 2021 basis of COVID-19? You know, the impact that we've had this year. Anyone can start here.
Okay, I'll start then. Yeah, well, hard to predict, of course, but I hope that we will rebound quickly into, well, for sure, a different society and a different way of looking at businesses and doing business. And I think there will be quite some aspects which are also better than how we've done it before. So that there's also a positive angle to that. But hopefully, first and foremost, yeah, we get out of this with less well, disruption and pain as possible. Yeah. Thank you.
So my take, Abhijit, would be that a lot depends on the treatment and the vaccine we are talking about, how soon we are able to see that. But from a logistics perspective, I think the industry is far too fragmented, and there is always an opportunity for growth for the players in this industry. Yeah, so I would suggest, or I would advise people to focus on business, focus on growth. And this COVID is good for armchair discussions, but there is a lot to do. Yeah.
Correct, absolutely.
For me, I think the one thing that humans are better than any other sentient life form is basically to learn from cumulative experiences and implement those learnings to come back stronger. So I only think from here the things will improve. You'll have more resilient global supply chains. You will have massive inroad into digitization in various shapes and form. The customer mindset will change, and all of us will have to be very agile and adapt to that changing mindset rather than being, bit stubborn, saying no, it's not going to change in short term. So the faster we adapt and agree and align to that change, the faster you will grow and adapt to that situation. You will come out as winner. But I think it will become a very intelligent, optimized process going forward in the way things will operate. And it's only going to be better, and there is going to be place for everyone to even deliver as per what they would want to deliver.
If there is one thing that I would say in this regard and looking into the future is cost pressures. Cost pressures is going to be there in every industry, everywhere. And as a professional, if we are not constantly watching out for means whereby we can remove costs and streamline the business, we are doomed. It is not about being the lowest cost player. That is not the best strategy. But the biggest thing today with the post-COVID scenario is we have to look very carefully at our costs. We have to benchmark it. We have to look at every possible avenue to streamline it. And if cost pressures are not keeping you awake, let me tell you, you are asleep.
Yeah. No, I think we've reached almost 5:20 now, and I think it's time that we take a hard brief. But like one thing that I would like to conclude here was that I think it's a tough period for everybody, and it's important that we also take care of the others. Our well-being also depends on our customers and our vendors. That's very important. I don't think it's in the immediate future we should take care to cover our losses as such. That's going to be the biggest. I think the biggest learning for me from Corona-19 is that to coexist meaningfully. That's what this whole thing has taught, that you keep your distances, you do everything right, you can survive. And I think that's, even in the logistics sector, everywhere, that's the most important. Anyway, without further ado, I would like to first thank everybody, all the panelists here, all the attendees. I would hand over to Mr. President. Mr. Barat, please take over from here.
Thank you very much, Abhijit. This was a fascinating panel discussion. In fact, I have got a page full of notes because I'm going to use it in some form or shape. Since fortunately this panel discussion is not covered by individual copyrights, I'm going to plagiarize it shamelessly, and I'm making an open confession about that. So even if you sue me, I would manage to escape because there were brilliant ideas. What made this particular panel discussion even more unique was that there were no differences, and that made it easier for us to cover a very large number of issues. And I'm not going to comment on all of them individually, but all that I can say is things like consolidation, collaboration, and very importantly, somebody touched upon blockchain. I think there is going to be a huge amount of efficiency in the connectivity and communication between the first point of the value chain to the last point of the value chain. Today, it is lost. Because of this, I think there will be far greater visibility. And I'm often reminded of a story. This I keep on repeating it because I find it very fascinating. There was an old man and a young man. They were chipping away and cutting stones. There was a person who was walking by, and he asked the young man, "What are you doing?" So he said, "Well, can't you see? I'm just cutting stones." When he went to the old man and asked him, "What are you doing?" He said, "Can't you see I'm making this beautiful temple?" So this is a perspective. This is going to be the biggest paradigm shift in the way this unfortunate pandemic would have impacted most industries. But there is also an hypothesis that those industries which have remained classical over a period of time, because they are going to witness the greatest amount of disruption, and logistics is going to be one of them. Because if you really look at the last 15-20 years, there might have been introduction of technology, there might have been introduction of mechanization, there might have been, but the basic model of that industry has remained unchanged. This is going to be the time when actually some of those holy truths will come up for questioning. And these could be at various dimensions. It could be from the operator point of view, the customer point of view, the aggregator point of view. Somebody mentioned about, it's not a question of whether everything will move from China or not. Even if 20% moves from China, the supply chain will become more complex, whether you like it or not. Because the moment you have a point to point, it makes it so much simpler. The moment you have even 10% or 15% coming from somewhere else, there will be a much greater need for having a more intelligent form of coordination and collaboration, so that the manufacturing and the trading and the distribution efficiency remains unperturbed and unchanged. So we are in for a very, very interesting time. And there was one last thing that also I thought was very interesting, which was that this is not the time to make judgments. We sometimes come to very quick judgments based on our intuitive feeling. Oh, people are going to stop traveling, so airlines will all collapse. Okay. Maybe commercial airlines in the model that we know them may collapse, but a very different model may emerge. It's not that human behavior will continue to remain what it is. It's only that the format in which that human need is going to be delivered will change. And that is going to be the key. And therefore, I am so happy, I'm so delighted that the panelists took us through this entire gamut of things. I can only, it's normally a tradition to say thank you, but in this, I would break the tradition and say, I'm grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I just would like to thank each and every panelist, as it was really a wonderful experience for all of us to hear from all stalwart, and we really enjoyed listening you all. But I would also like to mention that we have quite a good number of participants. Of course, now since it's 5:30, the number has dropped. But still, I could see from my attendee list, we have the very senior people from all cargo, from Tata Chemicals, from TCS, from BBA, UBI Banca, Mercedes-Benz. Then we have EUC Worldwide. So we have quite a good leading personalities attending this, and I'm sure, we will take it forward also next time whenever we plan this event. Thank you once again, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
very grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With permission of everyone, I'm ending the webinar.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Webinar.
Bye.
I will take a picture.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we have to take a picture.
Picture.
Just-
You should be a part of it. Good thought, Bhavik.
I missed it. My colleague Anvita is going to take a picture. Anvita, you will take, no?
But Dr. Renu, you also want to come in? You also
Yeah,
want
you
to?
should also.
You also
Okay,
can
so
come in.
I'll let me try. I don't know whether the webcam can. No, it says the space is occupied. I'm sorry, it's okay, not a problem. Not more than 6 people it can take. But that's fine, sir. That's fine.
So that's a low-hanging
Okay.
digital transformation that will happen soon.
Yeah.
You'll have 6 to 9. You need to go to meetings to change that.
True.
Okay, I'll just
Thank you.
take a picture.
Thank
1,
you, guys.
2,
Thank
3.
Thank you.
Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you.
Thank you so
Bye,
much.
bye, guys. Bye.
Nice catching
Bye.
up with all of you. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.